Hi, I'm Cheryl Jackson. Welcome to Your Voice. Every school year, parents pray their children get a good teacher. And research shows parents are right. The latest studies say the quality of teacher is the dominant factor in how successful children will be in school. It's more important than money, family circumstances, or cultural backgrounds. Even in the so-called best schools, there are different outcomes in each class, and that's largely due to the teacher. Experts say poor teaching isn't just a nuisance, it's actually detrimental to your child's learning. So what makes a teacher great? Where does this greatness come from? Is it innate or is it learned? And how do parents know if the teacher is great or not? I'm joined by three experts who can help us answer these questions. Cindy Carnick-Davison teaches grade 4 and 5 at Regent Heights Public School. She was last year's winner of the Ontario Teachers Federation Award for Elementary School Teachers. Mary Coy was a teacher for many years. Then she went back to school for her PhD and is now the head of the Centre for Teacher Education and Development at the Ontario Institute for Studies in Education. And joining us via webcam from his home in Derby, England, is Richard Gerver. He won the British National Teaching Award in 2005 after taking his primary school from the brink of closure to one of the most innovative schools in the world. He's also the author of Creating Tomorrow's Schools Today. Welcome to all of you. Thank you for coming into studio. Thank you, Richard, for joining us again.
My pleasure.
Let's get right to it. What makes a teacher great? Cindy.
I think a tremendous element of care, the desire to, well, I use an expression called see their hearts sing. And that's for them to discover the joy in learning, but especially the joy in themselves.
Okay, Mary? What makes a teacher great?
For me, I think a teacher becomes great when she makes her first task in getting to know her students. I call it a getting to know you session. Understanding who they are, where they're from, what kinds of interests they have, what kinds of contributions they can have to the classroom. So it's knowing your students extremely well, knowing your subject areas very well, being a knowledgeable person around your specialty or the other subjects you have to teach. People like Cindy teach many subjects. And I think that she's a passionate learner herself. That starts with getting to know her students. It starts with the kind of lifelong learning around her specialty, but it also ends with or continues with her lifelong professional learning. Whether it's with colleagues in the school collaboratively or with other peers, it never stops. I see them when they come to me as graduate students, but they've been on this journey in many other ways as well. So I think those are three key kind of variables.
Okay, Richard, what would you say? What makes a great teacher?
I would agree with both Mary and Cindy. The word that keeps coming through to me and always has really is empathy. For me, great teachers truly understand what makes their students tick. They're incredibly natural and confident around them. That's another trait, I think, of a truly great teacher. They're confident enough to be themselves. They're truly confident enough to be themselves with their kids, with their students, because let's face it, we all know that our children aren't stupid. They pick up on the vibe of how any of us are around them. And I think that ability to be relaxed, self-confident, self-assured, and for children to truly get the fact that you care about them, you're passionate about them, and you want to help them develop, it is absolutely core to any great teacher.
Mary, you teach teachers. Can you tell which ones will excel?
That's a really good question. I've thought quite a bit about it. I think that you can tell in pre-service. So this is the teacher education program, because I teach in both programs. You can really tell when someone has a heart for teaching. And I think it makes an enormous difference in the long run. We can't make great teachers. Great teachers become great. They start with something. There's a spark, a fire, an openness, a flexibility, an eagerness to make a difference. That's there, and you can tell that if this fire is stoked, and if it's developed, then indeed I expect some of those people will become great teachers. In graduate school, it's much easier to tell Some of them have been teaching for 20 years, some of them for 5 years, many of them actually for more than 10 years. So they've had an opportunity to hone their art. And I liked Richard's comment that caring makes all the difference. When I asked a number of students, so what made your great teachers great? And they talk about people who listen, people who care, people who make hold a very high standard to my learning, people who take an interest in my life beyond the classroom, people who have expectations that expect me to succeed, are key. So it's but much easier to tell. When they tell their stories, these teachers in my graduate classes, of what kinds of things they do with their students, it's also very good. I model probably similar things in both programs, but I model it's understood differently with somebody who's been in the classroom for a number of years than somebody who's anticipating going into a classroom.
Sure. Okay, now Cindy, there are great teachers all over the world, despite differences in training. Do you think that a great teacher is born, or can they learn it?
I always wanted to work with kids. I always took great joy and experienced great pleasure in seeing the sparkle, the shine, the light go on. So I think I agree with Mary as well as Richard. I think that it's in your heart. I think it is already there. But also working with pre-service teachers myself, I am able to certainly notice a tremendous difference. And you can see the passion, you can see the energy, the enthusiasm, the lust for their own learning, the learning of others, the joy that is brought to them by seeing those kids shine, by seeing those kids explore avenues and have experiences that they've never had before. So it's not only the teacher, but it's the kids and the relationship between the teacher and those kids that's key. And when Mary spoke about listening to stories, it's not only, the stories that they come with, but the stories that you bring out of them, the fact that you're hearing about their lives, their background, what has brought them to this place, where they want to go in the future, and helping them harness all of that and bring those dreams to fruition.
Richard, let me ask you this then. Is there an it factor? Is there something that these teachers bring to the table that others don't?
Yeah, I think there is. In my career, like all of us, I've met some really professional teachers. I've met some good teachers. I've met great teachers. And then every so often, it's my privilege to be in the presence of somebody who's truly special. I have a colleague that calls those people the magic weavers. They're teachers. You walk into their room and it's a unique experience. They truly feel special. And for me, it's about, it come back to this thing about confidence. It's the ability to truly make your classroom, the environment where those children are, something of a journey. So in other words, great teachers realize that everything isn't about control. It's not about over planning. It's not about a delivery of learning. It's about a truly interactive experience. And in my experience, truly great teachers often learn as much from their students as they give to their students back.
Okay, Cindy, you want to jump in here?
I have an example. Just recently we finished Medieval Times, and outside of our classroom the walls are a castle, and we have drawbridges and torches, and we had a medieval feast to end our week last week, where we had chicken legs and apple tarts and sweet potato pies and grape juice in glasses. And they couldn't have been happier, more excited, more engaged, more enthusiastic about everything that we had learned along the way and everything that they were going to take with them. And those are the kinds of experiences that give learning a lifelong stamp in time.
You have lucky kids in your class. Yeah. Richard?
Absolutely. Exactly what you're describing is a three-dimensionality to learning. Learning is an intensely sensory experience. You know, if you think the greatest things we recall in our lives as we grow older are often related to things like taste and smell and sound. And great teachers understand that instinctively often. And what they do is they create learning experiences. They don't just plan and deliver lessons.
Okay, Mary, we said in the introduction that the teacher is the dominant factor in your child's success. Why is that? Why is that one person so important to your child's learning?
Well, that's a really interesting thing because there's a tremendous amount of research around that issue. You mentioned that, and that's really true. Very often, that kind of quality is associated with test scores. So the teacher who gets the highest test scores is the one considered great. So I would argue that that indeed may be the mark of a good teacher. For me, that's not the mark of a great teacher. Although I think test score is part of the equation, to me, it's a very small part. Somebody said, why should it count that much when it only happens in one day? And the great teacher is there every day. And so I think the quality is one that extends beyond the classroom. So greatness is something that travels with you for life. You remember and you are inspired by, and you will move in directions you are incapable of moving without this great teacher.
Sure, but I guess that's hard to measure, isn't it?
It's very hard to measure, and that's why people get seduced into test scores, because it seems measurable when it's very, very difficult. And like greatness, I thought, you know, are there 8 qualities you need to be great? Are there 12? Can someone surprise me and say this quality constitutes greatness for these children? So I think it's a very complex, networked kind of thing. So if you could say, what is the association between quality teaching and quality learning? It is the great teacher who prepares quality kinds of learning exactly in the way Richard described, the way Cindy described.
Right.
But you know it's not of the moment.
Okay. All right, Cindy, do kids know whether they've got a great teacher?
Oh, I think so.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
What would you see?
Because they're joyous about coming to school every day. They look forward to it. They don't want to stay home. They don't want to miss school. They want to be there. They want to interact. They want those experiences. They want to be supported, and they want to be honored for who they are, what they have to contribute. As human beings, we all want to make a contribution. We all want to have something to offer. And if you provide the opportunities for kids, children, students to give of themselves and learn how they can contribute, then they blossom and they grow, and they really want to be able to continue to do that and to be there. Another aspect of it, though, as Mary was speaking, I was thinking it's also about the connections beyond the classroom in other ways, and that's with the families, with the parents, with having those ongoing conversations, with understanding what goes on in the home, how you can support in different ways that are outside the box of just a textbook or just the learning that is expected through curriculum expectations.
Richard, you helped a flagging school in England become one of the top schools. How important was the teaching to that turnaround?
Hugely. It was hugely important. But what it was also about was reconfiguring what was important. And Mary touched on this, I think, and I think it's extremely important. And sadly, because of the pressures that are on us as teachers, because of the pressures that are on us at schools, it often takes courage and leadership to be able to get these things right for the teachers in a school, to be able to create the conditions to flourish. So, for example, in our school, the school had experienced a spiral of decline, and particularly in academic standards. So, of course, the default setting is to obsess with academic standards. And that had happened largely in the school that I was running. What we had to do, because the potential amongst the teachers was there, and what we had to do was reconfigure, rewire, if you like, what they saw as their focus. And for me, great teachers and great teaching is about understanding that it's in the journey. The quality's in the process and in the journey. And if you get the process and the journey right, the outcomes will then take care of themselves. Now, in order to do that, you have to have really creative, really relaxed teachers who are able to, I think, reconnect with the reasons why they went into teaching in the first place. You know, so often you see teachers maybe 10, 15 years into their jobs who have almost forgotten the passion that they had as 18, 19-year-old kids themselves when they chose teaching as their vocational pathway. And so for me, there's a whole key there about making sure that teachers feel confident and comfortable about really immersing themselves and their students in the quality of the process.
Okay, thanks, Richard. Mary, quickly, we'll go to a clip in just a second, but first, how difficult is it for teachers to feel that freedom and that creativity and that, you know, ability to sort of maybe think outside the box, to be relaxed in what they do when they are dealing with a system, a curriculum, accountability, all of those things that we hear?
Yes, I can't even imagine that on a daily basis. It takes, Parker Palmer wrote a book called The Courage to Teach, and I like that title a lot. Because it really speaks to how difficult it is to do it when all these other pressures are coming. In my classes, I stress this. If you think globally, that is broadly, then the rest will come along. I did a research study where people talked about who do we meet in these first 4 chapters, you know, Dill, Atticus. Instead of talking meaning, and the student said to me, we wanted to talk about prejudice, and all they cared about was the names.
Right.
And so I think that's the difference between getting through a curriculum and being a great teacher, is understanding that learning evolves and that they can bring, I say all children are resources in this process. And when you work with children in small groups and communities, that they will thrive in ways unimaginably effective. And so I think you just need that courage.
All right, let's get to that clip now. We do love hearing from parents on your voice, and here's one mom who has opinions on what teachers need to be great.
Hi there, my name's Jane, and I'm a mother of 5 kids, ages 5 to 12. My thoughts on what makes a great teacher are a teacher has to be compassionate, has to care about the kids, because if they don't care about the kids, then they're there just as a job. It's not, I guess, a career. And they also have to be very firm, because you can care and be a little too wishy-washy, but you need to care and be firm at the same time. And they have to have a lot of compassion and understanding for the kids. And that's my thoughts on what makes a great teacher.
All right, Cindy, what do you think about what that mom said? Is she right?
Absolutely right. Although I think the firm aspect, I don't know if the firmness has to come from discipline. I think what really helps kids is to provide incredible experiences, engage them in their learning, motivate them to make choices, motivate them to continue to explore and experiment. And when you do that, there aren't any behavioral problems because of their engagement and their interest and excitement and love for what they're doing. And if you look at the big ideas and what Mary said about looking and thinking globally, it is about the big ideas. It's about teaching kids about the environment and about what's going on in other countries, and about using newspapers and about using their own experiences and harnessing that and using that in the classroom as another form of a textbook.
Okay, thank you for that. Richard, let's talk about socioeconomics for a minute. What role does that play? If a child is coming to school tired, you know, hungry, dealing with problems at home, how great does the teacher have to be to deal with that? Can they help at all?
Yeah, absolutely they can. You know, for a number of children in those kind of situations, school is the sanctuary, and it makes it even more important. So there's not necessarily a challenge on the teacher to be better or greater than they would normally be. If they already possess that empathy, that ability. What they need to do is just ensure that they offer that child that consistent part of their lives they might not get at home. You know, they want that consistency, that love, that compassion, that somebody takes an interest in them, that during their experience in the classroom, during the day, the experience that the child feels very much that they're being nurtured, they're being cared for, that they're being focused on. They're being respected, they're being listened to, and they're being given opportunities to take journeys of discovery and excitement. And any child from any background, you know, for so many kids, I've spent a lot of my career working in very socially deprived areas. School becomes the oasis. It becomes the place that children need for that stability and love. And actually, in great schools, in those kind of conditions, you'll often see those children take remarkable steps forward.
Cindy, what role does culture play? I mean, how important is it for the teacher to reflect the cultures in their classrooms, to be open to all of that?
I think it's about each individual student. I think it's beyond culture. I think it's beyond background. I believe it's beyond socioeconomic status. I think really it's about looking at each child as an individual. And basically, when you talk about differentiated instruction, it's the buzzword these days. But really, I've been differentiating instruction since I started teaching 25 years ago. Each child, to me, is an individual person that comes with so much background, and it's about exploring it. And each day in the classroom, we start the day, for example, with what I call community circle. Many others call it that as well. And that's where we hear our voices and we have a chance to engage and discuss. And it's not just about what we might read in the paper or even what we might read in the textbook, but it's about what happened last night, or it's about what's going on sometimes with their parents or with other students. And it's about the debriefing process. And it's about building, again, that communication, that trust, and that openness to feel that you're protected, that you're looked after, and that somebody really cares.
Mary, in Ontario, there's quite a high attrition rate. I mean, I think a lot of teachers leave within the first 5 years. Why is that?
Well, I think it's for a number of reasons. You alluded to it earlier when we talked about the testing. And I think that the support, mentoring, when they are inducted into the profession is often specious, if at all there. And I think the demands keep increasing for teachers. It is a very, very complex career, a choice to make. And so I think people become discouraged instead of being encouraged and supported. For instance, in Ontario, my area is secondary education primarily. What happens to the novice? She gets the most difficult classes. Somehow seniority means that you now get 12, university stream. So something has to change in that culture. The network of support needs to say to teachers, let's start you with a 2/3 schedule. Let's start you with classes that flow more seamlessly from your own experiences. Right. And let's know that there is a network here that's going to encourage you to start learning from the get-go and to maintain a kind of active and dynamic academic, intellectual, and professional life as you induct yourself into the profession. I think it really is, and I think it's fixable, actually. Okay. I think we can do something.
All right. Richard, how do parents know? I mean, parents are the ones at the end of the day hearing their children when they come home from school. How do they know if the teacher is great?
Well, the first thing is really simple. If the child talks about their experiences during the day, they've got stuff that's happening in school that's firing their imagination that they feel really confident and comfortable about. You know, kids that come home happy and smiling and can't wait to go back in the next day are happy kids. I remember laying down a challenge way back when I began the journey at the school I was privileged enough to be principal of. And challenging the staff and actually coming out with a daft challenge, which was, how do we turn our school into Disneyland? But what I meant by that really was that on a cold February morning when it was raining outside and a child woke up with a sore throat, you knew you had a good class and a good school if that kid would move heaven and earth to come into school that day in the same way that they would if they were queuing outside Disneyland with a sore throat and it was raining. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And so to me, there's nothing scientific. It's like I'll often say to parents will often ask me, how do I know what good schools look like? Well, the truth is, you can stand inside most schools, and within 10 seconds of being inside that building, you'll know if it's a good school. Because if the place is filled with laughter, kids are confident and walking around in sensible but lively and happy fashion. If you hear laughter from the staff room, if you hear joy and positivity, you know it's a good school. And there are two characteristics that I often challenge teachers to, which is, sadly, a lot of our children, a lot of our students leave education knowing what they can't do. You know, there are teachers out there who are supremely gifted at teaching our kids what they can't do. Great teachers instill in children the understanding of what they can do. And that's a great indicator for a parent. If a child keeps coming home from school telling mum or dad or a carer what it is they failed at today, what it is they can't do, something else they've realized that they're weak at, you know there's going to be a problem. But if your child comes home from school on the majority of days telling them what they've learned, what they've discovered, something new they've been able to do, and tell you about the things they're learning about themselves that make them unique and special, you know your child's in the presence of a great teacher.
Mary, realistically, what could a parent do if they were in that situation and they realize that their child has a teacher that isn't a good fit for them?
Well, as a parent,
yes,
I would say take action. That child is yours, and you have her best interest in mind. No one cares more than a parent, and a parent is responsible for assuring that her child or his child has the best educational experience possible.
So what would you do?
I would go straight to the school, straight to the principal, and make a change. If the alternative was a better one, then I would do that. I've had this with my own children. It is not looked on with a lot of pleasure by schools.
Sure.
At the same time, it's ridiculous to allow it to tolerate it.
Okay, we just have a few seconds left. Cindy, what would be your advice to teachers who aspire to greatness? And you're a great teacher, so what would you say?
I agree with Richard. Be yourself. There is only one of you, and really, if you can give of yourself and you can give of your heart to each and every one of those students, and I also agree with Richard in what he said about finding their strengths. We as people all have strengths, and if you utilize your strengths, I have tremendous empathy and compassion for people generally, and I believe tremendously in humankind and in humanity. So therefore, that would be my strength, and I would suggest every teacher to look in their heart.
I'm sorry, we have to go. Thank you. That was excellent advice. Thanks to all of you. My guests have been Cindy Karnick-Davison, Mary Coy, and Richard Gerber. If you'd like more information on this topic, go to tvoparents.com. We have links, articles, even a poll on great teachers. If you have a comment or a question, scroll down to the submission box on the main page, and we will get your question to the experts. We're on TV Sundays at 6 p.m. on TVO and online anytime at tvoparents.com. You can also find us on YouTube and Facebook. I'm Cheryl Jackson. Thanks for watching.